I want to really speak to you, and I'm actually quoting from James chapter 5, where in verse 14 it says, "Is there any sick among you? Let him call for the elders of the church. Let them pray over him, anoint him with oil, and the prayer of faith shall save the sick." But it also says in verse 17, Elijah was a man subject to like passions as we are, and he prayed earnestly that it might not rain, and it didn't rain for 3.5 years. And then he prayed again, and the rain fell. We know that story. But the reason I'm doing it is because my main text today is not in James. It's in the first epistle of Peter, the first chapter, and it's verse 7. Now, what I've already done is I've given a brief introduction. This is the main thought. Here, Peter is saying that the trial of your faith, being much more precious than of gold that perishes, although it's tried by fire. Now that's not the gold, it's the faith, is tried by fire. It might be found unto praise and honor and glory at the appearing of Jesus Christ. You see, a lot of people talk about faith. And I know that we have to have faith. I once had to use the illustration that because my wife always used to complain that I used to jump into bed, it was an act of faith that the bed wouldn't collapse. We have to use an element of faith. I mean, if you get in a car and somebody else, it takes a lot of faith for me if somebody else is driving it. You're putting faith in something else. So faith in its simplistic sense is part of everyday life. It's part of the trust that you have. You trust people, you have faith in them. And faith, in one sense, is trust. But here we're seeing something different, because looking back into James, here it's quite strongly saying that the prayer of faith shall save the sick. So here it's faith in a more powerful sense of action. It's praying and believing that sees the miracles. You see, a lot of people question me, and they all know, of course, that twice I've been healed from cancer, and both occasions it was a far bigger miracle than people realize, for two reasons. One, on neither occasion did I have any medication. And when I say any, I didn't take a tablet. I certainly didn't have chemo. I had no treatment. I took a step of faith, and I was completely healed. But in the first occasion, the healing happened after 3 months of prayer. The cancer had grown so big in my throat that it became an emergency. And on the Friday, they said, we have to operate immediately to save your life. I prayed, and 2 days later, when I went back, that cancer had completely gone, but it had not disappeared. The hand of God had cut it out and literally left the scar tissue, so that the doctors could recognize that somebody had operated. That was the hand of God. The second time, when I had the lung cancer, again, all I had was the investigation which proved that I had lung cancer. In fact, one of my daughters, who was a nurse at the time and worked in the hospital, when she was going through with me, she was encouraging me and saying, "Dad, you're going to believe for a miracle, and if you're going to believe for a miracle, first of all, you have to have the evidence that you have the cancer, or it's not a miracle." And that's absolutely true. But when the cancer came out, it didn't come out by any normal means. It came out through my mouth and like an explosion in the night. But the point that I'm making is that I was standing very clearly by a very, very strong element of faith. That's why when I'm reading from the first epistle of Peter and chapter 1 and verse 7, it says, the trial of your faith is more precious than gold. Gold perishes, your faith doesn't. But this faith, it says, although it's tested with fire, it's found and lasts. In other words, the real question of faith is when it's put to the test. You see, it's so easy for people to come to me and say, oh, David, you see a lot of miracles and I've got faith and I'm believing. But the whole question is, what level is your faith at? Is it a faith that's tested and tried and proved? You see, when I was in the prison, the same thing happened. I was praying for a miracle and God delivered me. But what gave me the confidence was the fact that in the prison I said to the Lord, Lord, when I had the throat cancer, you came and operated, you yourself cut the cancer out and left the scar, the evidence that you'd done it. And I said, Lord, that's not just faith to believe that the thing will go away. That was a miraculous intervention. And so I said, Lord, if you could do that with my throat cancer, I'm going to believe that you will release me from this prison. So if you understand, my faith was based on that fact.